Okay. Hello, testing. Can you hear me? Is that, yeah? Yep. Great. Cool. So I think the core premise of what I'm going to share with you is that the age of software abundance, to me, is also the age of the abundance of ideas. And I find that, we saw earlier in the example of the effect of the Industrial Revolution, the internet, etc. But what's interesting about these points in history is that they also change us, and they also change how we think, how we work. So a good example of that is I'm going to show you how we went from, or I went from putting a prompt in ChatGPT, getting that image as a result, to it forming how we think through a subscription strategy in the Monzo app that is now sort of a mature visual language with like animations and illustrations and different expressions throughout the app. So I'll start with talking about how our AI culture at Monzo started. So I took about a week off in February, January last year. I was playing around with a bunch of different tools, and I realized just how far the technology had come. So I came back to work and I said to all of the designers, hey, I've got this idea for a week. We're going to do a 15-minute a day challenge. And the premise was that you can keep the AI overlords at bay. And you could use any tool of your choosing. If you'd heard of it, just sign up. Most of these tools let you try it for free. So there's no reason why we shouldn't just give it a try. And for 15 minutes, you'd try and build whatever you want. Didn't have to be at all related to Monzo. And just share at the end of the day what you learned from trying it. People had a lot of fun with it. People made dodging games. People started to play around with like different interactions for how the cards could like exist in the app. People started to create their own versions of Microsoft Paint as designers will. But the key bit for me was that suddenly this thing that was feeling really daunting started to be something that you could have a lot of fun with. And people start to also see ways in which it could like connect and help bring to life some ideas of the work that they were doing at Monzo. For me, it's about becoming more confident with AI through embracing your inner child. I think I remember being a kid and figuring out all the different ways I can assemble Lego. For me, all of the different combinations of Lego have now increased. You can put together a bunch of different things that you couldn't before. You can do so much more easily, and you won't step your foot and get hurt on Lego. So fun builds buzz, and buzz internally helps get people behind something. I think a lot of the narrative around AI is around this sort of what's going to happen to our jobs, how are we going to make sense of work in the age of software abundance, etc. But to me, it's also about leaning into it and figuring out how do we change? How do we change how we think about making things as a result of what's possible now? And I think fun is an important part of that. So I hope that you will leave today hoping that you have more fun with what you can do with these tools. So the fun also meant that people stopped seeing it as a work thing. When people see it as a work thing, I've got this for my training budget, my development, I'm going to do it in working hours. Actually, this is something that is just fun to use. You don't have to just do it at work. So people started to use it a lot more in their spare time, and I started to notice individuals that were using it a lot more in their spare time. So I asked people to teach us what they were learning in their own time, and one of our designers, Ben, he taught us all how to create a Pomodoro timer using Cursor. And what that taught everyone in the team was, here's how you use Cursor, here's how you set up your rules, here's how you commit code to GitHub, here's how you push code to a production application of some kind. So it started as a little week-long challenge, 15 minutes a day, and it turned into a culture of embracing AI. One of the middle sort of lunch and learner teacher there is actually in the room today somewhere. Fabs, where are you? Oh, back there we go. So it's really cool to see that what started as maybe a Heldiney idea spread into a culture of how we create and make things at Monzo. And we still have these AI lunch and learns. They continue to evolve. We started to bring in people from other companies. We've had designers from Intercom come in, talk through very practical examples of how they're using AI at Intercom. We've had designers from the browser company, various other companies. What's really cool is that we're now at a point that designers are also coding directly to production. And I'll get to it in a bit. But that means that what started this way of people teaching each other tools and teaching each other how to embrace ideas and using those ideas for useful things is actually translating into people working directly with the Monzo code, not just from creating, like making changes to the app or to the website. We've got business banking application that also has a web version, but understanding how the code works in more nuanced and detailed ways that you might have from just working in Figma, asking an engineer, hey, can I do this thing in this part of the app? Actually, you can just ask Cursor now. So you can make a lot of progress a lot faster. What's interesting is that we also started to see the sort of natural entrepreneurial mindset of the designers at Monzo manifest into them creating more things outside of work. So Ben, one of our designers, highlighting Ben again, but there will be other people, he was living in New York at the time, and there's context as to why that's relevant. And he created this app where you can point to your phone to the sky, take a picture, and the app will tell you what the name of that blue is, and you can share with a friend. We all tried it in London, didn't work as well, but you know, it was a good effort. Cool. So yeah, the fun meant that people stopped seeing this thing less of something that was going to eventually replace them, and something that also meant that they could start changing. They could start to perceive themselves slightly differently to how they originally did. And that's, you know, the start of our healthy relationship with AI, which has continued to blossom. For me, it's also meant I've volunteered in mental health. I've been a volunteer Samaritan for 10 years. I've seen the power of a great conversation. I call Samaritans myself when I needed emotional support, and I had such a great chat. I thought, you know, I want to learn how to do that. I want to volunteer how to do that. So I thought, why isn't there a professional version of something like this, where you're not necessarily mentoring anyone, you're not necessarily you know, seeking coaching of any kind. You're just seeking to have a conversation about a topic. And I decided to build it. So I started to, for context, I am a little bit technical. I say a little bit because, you know, I wasn't coding day to day, but I understood code. So I was able to build something a lot faster than I would have in my evenings, in my weekends, because I had these tools. So I just started a prototype, I launched it, and it turns out there were other people that felt it would be cool to have something like this too. So from launching it last year, having it in alpha, having it in beta, going through all the traditional sort of ways in which you learn if your product is useful, we now have 600 people using it. We now have revenue. We now have a growing community of people who will actually advocate and talk about this product in their own companies. We have someone who wants, someone who works at HelloFresh, who's a huge fan of Flint, actually wants us to be something that the company pays for because they love it that much. They have that many people from HelloFresh on it. So this is my way of also showing that, you know, what started as an idea is now becoming something that is useful for other people, and it's covering a niche that maybe would have been harder to prioritize before. So yeah, 1 week you're having fun, then bam, shareholder value. So you know, this is one of the interesting ways in which designers at Monzo might work today. So you might have Figma open, but to the side you might also have Cursor open. You might be diving into a specific part of the app that you're making changes to. You might be asking it questions. You know, how do the tax bots take in transaction data from this source? Okay, cool. Where does that API connect to blah, 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 so on and so forth. So you understand the constraints that you're working with a lot better. So the confidence through which you can hand over designs to an engineer is much higher than it would have ever been before, even if you're not necessarily vibe coding everything yourself. So what that means in terms of the ways of working as well is that people can now take in much higher fidelity experiences directly to user testing. So instead of, say, taking a static Figma a prototype where you have to give loads of context, oh, by the way, this is a prototype, so you won't be able to click certain things and etc. Actually, you don't have to say that anymore. Just build the thing. Build a really scrappy version. Use Lovable if it's easier. Build a cursor version of it. With Monzo, we have some constraints in that, you know, we're a bank. We can't actually ask people to download applications in user interviews. So we have to find like a bunch of workarounds. But if you're testing something on the web, then you've got a link that you can share with them and they can navigate. But this also changes the way in which you can learn and how quickly you can learn. It's not just about the building. So the core premise for me is that you should make the ugly version first using AI, blame it on AI, because you know, AI really sucks with these things, right? But the point is that you got started and now you can move on, and now people understand what you had in your head in a much sort of higher fidelity version than they would have before. So we had this visual language for a subscription tier that I've been working on in Monzo Business called Team. And as the name would imply, it's all about businesses that are growing, they have larger teams, and we built a bunch of tools to help them do that. And the premise that we use this visual language of a rocket, and we were doing sort of a promotional campaign. I thought, oh, it would be really cool if like there was something else happening around the rocket, something that illustrated the effect of a team. So I put together this scenery of this rocket flying, and there was like these nebulas in the background and these gas clouds, whatever. And I sat with a brand designer and I sort of spoke through my ideas, and he put that scene together. Everyone loved it. We launched it as an experiment, performed really well, increase in revenue, everyone's happy. So I took that work that the brand designer then created. I added another different visual cue that we use for another of our subscription plans, and I said, hey, we've got this scene. Take this different vehicle and create a scene for that. So then we started to create these different scenes for these different subscription tiers, and what started as a GPT thing evolved into a visual language that we're now using for all of our subscription tiers, that we're now thinking through how do we animate this, how do we elevate it from, give it a special touch when we're talking about different things that we're launching. This is something that is now live, and we're launching a savings boost campaign that you can get 3.25% on your business savings. Check out Monzo. It's starting to seep through everything in the visual language of the app. So even the way that we thought about the stars in that original image I showed you, you can see in that central image, while you don't have the rocket there and you don't have all the different vehicles, you have the sort of sparkle of the stars and the space sky. Can you say sky for space? I don't know. So in terms of keeping that culture going, we've got a Slack channel called Designing with AI. In that Slack channel is where people can feel comfortable just throwing in questions, talking about different things. This is an example of a designer talking about the ways in which they're getting help from other people and what they're learning. That same designer then vibe coded to production. We have designers using like Figma Make to create tools to help other people export a logo in a certain format. And the premise of it is I want you to leave this room chasing ideas, chase all of them, and hopefully some of them will turn to results. Thank you.